So I'm very excited to share with you the progress of an important initiative, the Enterprise Digital Learning Modernization Reform Effort. We refer to it as EDLM.
Today we're going to talk about Enterprise Digital Learning Modernization, or EDLM. EDLM is one of a dozen reform efforts undertaken by the Pentagon in response to Executive Order 13781, which directed all federal agencies to look for ways to improve their efficiency and effectiveness. DoD identified 9 areas of reform, including for its IT and business systems, and one of the sub-areas under it was for learning management systems. In July 2018, the Pentagon's Reform Management Group, a body of the most senior leaders from across the department, approved this reform. In a nutshell, it has 2 main goals. First, be more efficient in how we acquire and maintain digital learning systems, and second, implement our digital learning more effectively by moving to an enterprise learning ecosystem model.
So through EDLM, the Department of Defense will have one centralized digital learning ecosystem for all active duty and civilian personnel. Basically, an integrated learning environment for 3 million DoD users. So making our military stronger and more effective will require state-of-the-art learning systems to deliver training and education when it is needed, wherever our warfighters may be. It's about upskilling our workforce for that 21st century and using data to inform decisions and creating a DoD-wide learning ecosystem to deliver learning at the point of need. This approach enables personnel readiness through a digital learning ecosystem.
Learning ecosystem is jargon that refers to a system of learning systems that are interconnected, like Lego blocks, through common data standards, software specifications, and other business rules. You might hear it called something like a continuum of learning or a learning data fabric. The point is that it lets us treat learning systems, or each learning experience, like a node within the system, and also manage in aggregate at the organizational level. From a business perspective, the ways DoD purchases and manages its digital learning systems leaves room for improvement. An internal review in 2015 by the DoD Deputy Chief Management Officer found DoD spends 870% more per full-time employee on HR management, which includes digital learning systems, than the next costliest commercial entity.
I remember hearing about all the different versions of the same training that were out there. And by consolidating this and having a single user platform, it makes this much easier for our users to access.
From a policy perspective, this reform ticks a lot of the boxes. For the training and education community, it helps us implement DoD's digital modernization strategy, DoD's data strategy, and the personnel and readiness strategic plan. It also pursues all 3 lines of effort from the President's management agenda. That would be IT modernization, data accountability and transparency, and enabling a 21st century workforce.
In 2019, I issued a memo directing all DoD components to first consider USA Learning as a source for assisted acquisition of all relevant education and training products and services.
EDLM can really be described in 2 broad strokes. First, acquire and maintain digital learning products and services more efficiently. And second, build an enterprise learning ecosystem. You can break that second goal down into the systems, in other words, the enterprise architecture, and the stuff within the systems, the data. For those of you familiar with the Advanced Distributed Learning Initiative, you might recognize this as equivalent to the Total Learning Architecture. But the reform doesn't really focus on those kind of brand names. It does, however, target 2 more narrow enterprise applications to help corral the systems and data. First, an enterprise course catalog, and second, an enterprise learner record repository. Oh, and from a management perspective, these are the 3 named lines of effort under EDLM. Let's dive into these lines of effort in more detail. The first is to streamline and centralize the acquisition of new education and training capabilities through the Office of Personnel Management's USA Learning program. It provides shared services for contracting, licensing, and hosting of digital learning. Technically, all of that is called category management because it lets DoD manage a whole category of products and services together, and it's directed by this memo from the Office of Management and Budget. Category management is pretty important because today we're not entirely sure how much we're spending on digital learning products and services. That's because those purchases are spread out across thousands of programs and hundreds of different contracts. Our best estimates put it at about $500 million a year for the DoD.
So think about what is necessary to manage this kind of system the way it existed in a very disparate manner, having all these people needing to access training, being able to find management systems, being able to find the right course. This made it very cumbersome. And what EDLM is striving to do is to reduce that complexity. EDLM is developing a searchable enterprise course catalog. There are thousands of proprietary and unconnected catalog capabilities across the Department of Defense. This current way of creating and making learning resources available has resulted in the following challenges. Existing course catalogs are not interoperable and are not designed to easily transfer data about learning activities across DoD. Data sharing about course information is complicated and hampered by the lack of standard metadata to describe each course. The enterprise course catalog changes how we look at making course information available to potential learners. Leveraging best practices from the private sector, the enterprise course catalog will reduce duplication, easily make available existing resources and tools, and provide a better user-customer experience. This effort will tie together existing DoD catalogs and automatically generate metadata from those local systems and aggregate the metadata within a single portal for easy access and searching of critical resources that are out there. This will allow military personnel and civilians to go to one place to find all the training and education courses that DoD has to offer. Now, for the administrators, you'll be able to know what courses and tools are available to more effectively plan curriculum to further service member capabilities and careers.
Today in DoD, we have hundreds of course catalogs all over the place. They may be in the form of spreadsheets or PDFs or actual databases. What we need to do is be able to unlock the data from all of those different locations, but still have it be managed at the local level. So we need some way to crawl through those different disparate data sources and harmonize the data into a common standard, then expose those data through an application programming interface. We need some way to be able to make sense of those data though. We need to have a common currency so that when one organization talks about leadership and another organization talks about leadership, we know whether it's an apples to apples comparison. Similarly, we need to be able to expose all of those data into a common index, and we need some way to find all of those different entities that are scattered across DoD. Finally, we need to expose the data in a very usable form so that end users, whether those be learners or administrators or commanders, can go to one portal to find all of the information they need, a sort of one-stop shop or a search engine across all of the existing data sources that are still managed locally. And ideally, at the end of the day, we want them to be able to press one button and get to that course through a single sign-on or other kind of authentication.
You may be familiar with going to 5 different websites for training or taking additional training outside the DoD domain. The results of the trainings are kept in separate databases without the ability to consolidate into a single learner profile to get a full picture of the individual's potential. The vision of the Enterprise Learner Record Repository changes the education and training perspective to lifelong learning, where tools and data are readily available to keep track all of these training efforts and use the data to make decisions on how to best develop DoD workforce talent.
Finally, the last line of effort is the Enterprise Learner Record Repository. This is the idea that we want to have all of the learner performance data accessible across the entire enterprise. Think of it like this. You have a variety of training and education technologies, whether that be a digital gradebook, a simulator, an e-learning course. All of those things produce data. Ideally, they should be producing good quality performance data. And then ideally, we want those data to be pushed out to at least a local level. That goes into a transactional learning record store. Yes, that is part of the XAPI, or the Experience Application Programming Interface specification. So you get these data at those local levels, but they're probably going to be more detailed than what you need. So then we need to filter and transform those data up to an organizational level. We do that through a common master object model. Then those organizational learning record stores can push the data up into a data fabric, accessible across the enterprise, and transformed to support that identity management and that common currency for semantic interoperability that we talked about earlier, related to the Common Course Catalog. Finally, we need to have a portal, some way for stakeholders, whether that be learners themselves, commanders, instructors, or other organizational leaders, where they can access all of this information.
That's what I always like to think about, that learning ecosystem concept. It's like learning is all around you in all different forms. So it could be an online course, it could be a face-to-face course, it could be virtual reality or simulation or anything, but it's all customized to you. It follows you in your continuum. Mm-hmm. And I think that seems very futuristic, but I think it's actually available for us really soon if we just put the systems in place.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And over the past 2 years, we've actually seen steady progress toward the reform's two main objectives. One was improving the way DoD buys and maintains its digital learning software and services, and modernizing the department's digital learning systems. So not a small task. And so we've continued to make progress after we first pulled the trigger and approved it as a reform. So on the first point, we're already at a full operational capability. So DoD departments can, and I'd like to emphasize should, already use or be using the USA Learning Assisted Acquisition support. That's through OPM. We've taken steps to help streamline that process, for instance, signing the Memorandum of Agreement with OPM back in 2019. Myself and Margaret Weichert signed it, as well as issuing guidance to DoD and building an automated portal where DoD organizations can submit their requirements. And if you're interested in accessing that, it's at projects.usalearning.net. So that might be helpful to you. On the second point, we're working on several research and development efforts which are necessary to build the enterprise architecture for digital learning and to roll out a DoD-wide data fabric. So two of the major lines of effort for this area, of course, the Enterprise Course Catalog, which we talked about earlier, as well as Enterprise Learner Record Repository, very important initiatives. So an early prototype of the Enterprise Course Catalog is already running on USA Learning servers. It has data for more than 50,000 courses. So we're moving into the next phase of development now, and we anticipate developmental testing in FY21, so not very far away. We're looking to have the initial operational capability in FY22. So as you can imagine, building these kind of systems takes a lot of time, in part because we're taking all those disparate systems and consolidating into the defense-wide, DoD-wide, I should say, data fabric. So we're not just building a new database. So we need time for the development and testing, as well as looking at those other pillars that the CDO is interested in, and that's cybersecurity. So the Enterprise Learner Record Repository has additional complications. In addition to normal IT and data challenges, we also need to consider identity and access management, privacy, various federal regulations for handling personal data. So we need to be mindful of those things. We already have an architecture for it, and we're in the early stages of development. So we're looking to conduct early testing in FY21, but the full rollout will obviously take a little bit longer. Fortunately, for both the course catalog and the record repository, as well as the overall learning ecosystem, we don't need every piece to be complete before we can reap benefits. So keeping in our Agile theme, we're doing this in iterations. For example, even with just an early version of the enterprise course catalog, we can start to identify similar courses and look for trends in the aggregate data on DoD training and education opportunities. So that's already in process. And even before we have a full data fabric across our training and education systems, schoolhouses and training organizations can use the better data and any associated learning analytics produced by modern learning technologies. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of where we are in the progress that we've made to date.
So there you have it. DoD is modernizing the way that we do digital learning. First, we're buying and sustaining things differently through category management and through a partnership with the Office of Personnel Management's USA Learning Program. Second, we're making things differently. We're moving from the industrial age to the information age of learning and embracing the learning ecosystem concept. For DoD personnel or interested vendors, make sure that you check out the Defense Instruction 1322.26 for the latest policy on the relevant specifications and standards necessary to make the learning ecosystem work.